Hi, everybody. We're back with another episode of the Intrado Way. Today, we're talking with Don Fossgreen and Terry Miles of Intrado. If you're joining us from a different episode in the series, we always like to tell you what Intrado is up to and how they got to this. Terry, why don't you give us the context that's going on right now in Intrado?
Sure. Intrato is about a $2 billion annual revenue corporation that has historically been a holding company. We have tended to let acquisitions lie in place where they are with no attempt to really integrate them in any meaningful way. And that stopped a few years ago. We've been trying to go from a holding company model to more of an operating, more of a software company model. And in that context, there have been multiple attempts to consolidate platforms, save money, and become more efficient. It all fits into this broader envelope of digital or business transformation, but we've been trying in a number of ways, infrastructurally, procedurally, tools and platforms to adopt. And we're a couple of years into a pivotal adoption right now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for talking with us. It's invaluable information.
Sure.
All right. And Don Fossgreen, the leader of the Center of Excellence for Application Transformation. Did I get that title right, Don?
That's what my job is. The title is Principal Platform Architect, specializing in digital transformation.
Awesome. Now, we talk with many customers who would like to do digital transformation, but the decision set to take it is hard because it has to be done in multiple layers and has to be driven through the organization. So I'm super interested. How was West/Intrado able to take this decision to actually do digital transformation? That's in your title. What does it mean for Intrado, and how did this decision come about?
So we were lucky in that the leadership of the company had already understood that we needed to transform from this model into actually an integrated company. So they gave us the right to figure out the best way to do that. And with our many various tech stacks and people all around the world, everything, we knew we needed something to simplify this march onward. There was no way we could just do it by pushing the boulder up the hill. We had to at least flatten the hill a little bit for everybody, and that was where the impetus for digital transformation and specifically choosing a platform that would accelerate that came from.
Great. A platform to accelerate digital transformation. Do you have a formal definition of transformation? When we run into it in the wild, people don't know what it means. It's a reorg term as far as most people are concerned. How do you see the word transformation in a business context?
For us, it was a total rethinking of our software lifecycle system from the very beginning, of having the same tools for everyone to use, going from CVS and Git and SVN, and we literally had every one of them into a single system, a full CI/CD pipeline, automated testing facilities, the ability to deploy your code in multiple environments in exactly the same way so that CI/CD really can advance things across the levels. Yeah. And then also a way to monitor everything. And then finally, we wanted to be able to share. We had a lot of overlap in our company. We really wanted to be able to share our APIs. So an API gateway was the last part of that. So sort of, four big feet on the stool. Yeah. The CI/CD, the platform, Apogee, an API gateway, and monitoring capabilities.
Well, okay. So let's ask about a couple of those things. How are you measuring your success in API consolidation?
So what we're measuring is, rather than just consolidation as a number, we're looking to increase usage of APIs that we have converted onto the platform. And now we have a platform that actually enables us to know how much usage we're getting on them. Before, someone could read a log somewhere, but without that, you couldn't really, it wasn't an easy thing to track. If you make things easy to track, people will track them and try to improve their scores. So that's really what we're tracking, is just increasing our usage as things go on. Are we ramping up? Eventually, we have a plan we've gone through and looked at all of our applications and looked for overlap. And we have thought about how we could reduce that. That is our primary goal. Our primary goal is to get best of breed onto an API platform and then get them used, and they'll sort themselves out.
Yeah.
There's something else I'd offer in the way of measurement, and it's not just for APIs, but for any number of metrics that could come in a project like this. A parallel report that is available and sometimes used on up to executives is to map any sort of usage, let's say API adoption, for example, to map our apps as our development teams and operations teams see them, to map those to revenue generating products, and then to map those products to the revenue numbers that can more easily be associated at the product level. And so there's usage reporting, which technically, I mean, among our technical teams, that's the main thing we're looking for. Yeah. But if you're going to report up and outside of GTS, we try to make sure that we can map these apps the teams are working on to products. And when we talk about impact, we have found that it's better to talk about the revenue footprint that the applications migrating to PCF can support. It's just a different type of currency that you can use to talk about the success of your project. And that's highly recommended, is to try to connect it to the money, so that your CIO can connect it on out to other parts of the business.
Yeah. And again, that's obvious on the face of it. Oh, tie activity with some revenue thing. But this is a terrifying, apparently, concept for most people. And they don't say no. They don't say, no, we're not going to go through that app and figure out how it plots to revenue. They're like, no, it's not possible to figure that out. And they won't do the work. And so, Terry, I think we're going to have a special series on how do you actually measure this and deliver it. Well, I won't go
Following the money?
Yeah. Let's have a follow the money series. I don't know why no one can do it, but they really can't. It's totally crazy to me.
So this is something that startups do a lot better, because they tend to start with exactly one product. You get into a big company like this, and they're like, it's completely beyond my control. There is no way to know that. That is not true. You don't have to be perfect in your assessments to make your assessments valuable.
Yeah, great. So many directions to go. This is a great, I don't want to get lost on our topic, because Don, really the question is, okay, you've made the decision now. You're the executive, you made the decision. What team do you choose to build to help deliver this decision?
So my idea here was, because we were such a disparate company, we needed to have a team that was from around the company and around the world as well. So we asked vice presidents of development all across our company to nominate people to be on this cloud native enablement team. And what we promised them is we will give them training, and they will become much more experts in all things digital and CI/CD, in PCF especially, et cetera. And what they're going to have to do is we paid for their training, but they needed to give the time for the training, and they give some portion of their time back to the company as a whole. Yeah. Most of their time is spent within their organization, but they still sometimes are asked. We have one of our people who specializes in .NET, and we have that across the company, but we don't have that wide set of expertise in it as much. So he gets called on a lot to consult on those projects.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get to I mean, you just said the magic things. Many VPs across many organizations. Can you give us an idea of that number? And then Terry talks about how do you supply dopamine to that executive for like a year, that what they're letting their people do or what they're supporting their people doing is in fact useful and productive. And I just chose a year as an arbitrary, like, hey, we're going to be doubtful about this for a year. But how long are they doubtful? What do you have to do to allay the doubt so you can keep the ball rolling? When are they turned around? Sorry, that's a lot of questions. How many people? And then those other 3 questions.
So each VP sent either 1 or 2 people. We ended up with 8 people on the team across the organization. At the time, we had really 4 major business areas. We run the rototiller through that every once in a while, so I'm not sure exactly how many we have now. But, you know, bringing them in and having these people be their choice, that's your first step, you know. And we were really careful explaining what we needed. What we were looking for is really technical people. They are here to help solve hard technical problems, not figure out where the budget for something else comes from, or, you know, can we have resources for this? They'll help determine how many resources and how much budget may be needed, but that isn't what we do as a team. And so, and also they need to be able to use that time and then provide expertise across that whole area of the business. So the VPs were very motivated to pick good people. They also knew that they had targets for adoption that needed to be met. And most of them were really looking forward to this because we were going from a place where it was very, very difficult to procure virtual machines, etc. And so they knew they were going to be able to go in the right direction if they could get the right apps and people onto the platform.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that Thomas highlighted was this general agreement at the cross-executive level, and you know, for almost pro forma. What would happen if each one of those 4 VPs that you had to deal with were really concerned only with their own BU and that kind of thing? What kind of, do you think you could have done it like that?
So I think that if we hadn't had the big push from on top that we were becoming one company, before that it would have really been a challenge, but they really learned that they needed to do it, and they saw enough value within their organization to go, well, you know, that'll only be a percentage of the time, and it has worked out to be a percentage of the time that you're on loan to some other portion of the business, but the overall value was both evident and really pushed for. So they were not all that reticent to add members to the team.
Okay, great. That's once again, that we're trying to offer service to the community here. Like, hey, if you want to make this change for digital transformation, what are you going to have? And from the pivotal point of view, if you don't have leadership that hasn't committed, Thomas said it perfectly, I bet my job on this, I bet my badge on this. And so we just don't see it work across a company, departments or business units sometimes, but we don't see it work across a company without broad executive support. And
one thing that could help in this area might be that in our specific circumstance, the PCF initiative was preceded in time by a CI/CD initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that helped there was it's CI/CD tooling is pretty much a universally accepted desire. Anybody working in this decade would want to do so.
Right.
And you don't have to completely re-platform your application to adopt those CI/CD tools. So it has served as a nice chronological first step before a PC. It's not that we require you to do it, but why would you do a PCF migration if you're not doing some CI/CD tooling? So that's been to our favor too, to help give that concept of, we're giving you some value, we're consolidating operations, now let's take the next step.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, episode 1 covers CI/CD with Terry and Colin Burke. All right, Don. Well, okay. Awesome. You've built a team. Now, how do you train them to engage? How do you choose your first engagement? What does it look like on the ground when you have that first meeting?
So the first thing, we went to the Pivotal Acceleration Lab PAL training for PCF, and this served a couple of things. It turned us into a team because we all attended at the same time, and we all learned the same things at the same time. So that was really our first step. We had a meeting where we all talked, etc., but until we spent 3 weeks together coding together, because it's the PAL lab, so it's pair programming, and everyone learned that everyone there was super smart, and people had different skills, and all of that was really, really an excellent way to bind us as a team, learn about each other, and get us to the next step.
Guys, I just am continually blown away by the same things you do. Terry, is this part of the education designs? Like, get a group of people together and essentially put them in a kind of boot camp? Was this an accident, or is this part of a master plan that everyone got trained the same way at the same time?
This was part of a plan that was really in place largely before I showed up. So my own instructional design chops they might help execute on this decision a little bit, but this is mostly Don and others realizing how humans learn. And we talked about this in other episodes, but people with technology backgrounds are a certain type of learner.
Yeah.
And they need to know that they're talking to someone with the acumen of Don's level, or else that conversation's going to be a waste of their time and their perception. Yeah. So the entire interaction model comes around a style of learning that is more demonstrative and more intuitive, and it is intentionally an anti-pattern to trying to scale large-scale learning programs with online learning. That is, at best, an augmentation of how these people are going to understand how to get there. Wikis are crutches. Okay, it's mostly about getting people like Don with people that are going to make the decisions and write the code.
Yeah. Okay. So that is back to our small team. Agile doesn't we don't believe Agile scales. So it's
yeah.
We believe it's a cell structure, right? And you can make big stuff with it, but it doesn't scale at the cell level.
Agreed.
Yeah. So someone following in your footsteps, Don, would want to do these sort of things. Another thing that you guys did that's the smartest thing I've seen any customer do is that you made sure you had someone at all of the pivotal dojos, so you could make notes and intersect with that process. Like, I tell that to people inside of Pivotal, and they're like, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard. Like, yeah, these guys know what they're doing. So tell me a little bit about how that came to be.
So I really like this idea of this intense interaction of bringing people onto the platform in this way of sharing knowledge, etc. And so I knew that our cloud native enablement team needed to be able to do this as well. And nothing better than being part of it and learning all the process of it, not just the how do you code the stuff up, how do you organize it so that people get stuff done, move forward. We learned a lot, like just every week, having the show and tell at the end of the week. This is really essential. And since we had upper management who was interested, this was the first time many of our developers had ever actually had a chance to show off their code in front of, you know, your CTO.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen in a lot of places of this size. That's a startup type of thing.
Yeah, I'm back again. You can see that I'm just like completely, you're doing the sanest possible things to my way of thinking and to the way that we see how we would like the whole pivotal experience delivered. And so that's experiential and participatory knowledge, right? So I know Terry's design stuff is going to do that. But once again, put yourself in the situation, you're a Fortune 750 executive. And all of your people don't work like that at all. Do you have any advice for that person? How would they start?
I've got a recommendation. Wow. It's to me, it's the Tiger Team approach is just a good way to start. You try to find some cross-functional team. And like, I'll go back to, Don was talking earlier in this episode about the early history, a bake-off of Pivotal and other possible platform as a service projects. And he ended up choosing Pivotal. But one of the things he and others learned along the way was that our company wasn't ready for this. We had to get help from the outside. We needed an enablement plan. One of the things he's talking about is that some of the ability to acquire infrastructure, the ability to make infrastructure A talk to infrastructure B. So networking and security, some of the things like that, we realized, oh no, full stack, we are not ready to do this. So one of the first things that had to happen was a greater correspondence with members of those teams, led typically by line management. And so they come from a paradigm that is decidedly not agile. Right. And so was there a way to get those people to dedicate more time to work with one another for a common goal, an increment of work? And now I'm sort of shifting into agile talk, right? Find a demonstrable goal that seems doable to X number of people in X amount of time, get that to happen, and then model it to happen. Because there's no way to do this without a procedural reform. Even if you're agile, you're going to end up a different kind of agile after you do this. Yeah. So you may as well get going and get cross-functional about it as soon as possible.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Go ahead, Don.
Another thing is find value in what you're doing that isn't, we could see what was going to come from all this long-term, how much all in all, you're going to be more efficient, you're going to be happier, you're going to have less bugs, all those things. Yeah. It's really important to find out your people's pain points so that you can come in and say, we're going to measure your pain point. We're not just going to say, you got to do this because we promised our benevolent benefactors at Apollo that we're going to do it. We are actually going to do it to make your life better. And so let's find out, what is your big problem? Yeah. So release night. Is release night the thing that all of your QA and developers are like, I don't ever want to release again because it ruins my whole month? Yeah. And we're like, first of all, it shouldn't be a month. It should be something that you just do at any time, any place. So depending on what it was, like, oh, we have mysterious bugs that we don't know why they happen. We can help with that because we can promise you that what is happening on your production facility is exactly the same code as is running in your testing facilities. Find out what they're and measure how bad it is for them, and then promise to make it better and deliver on that.
Yeah. Don just exemplified a big theme in our entire podcast series. There's extrinsic motivation that you tell your dev managers and dev directors, you need to get this app onto PCF. Why? Because we say so, right? That's your extrinsic motivation. And that's useful because that's going to lead to certain measurable goals like decommissioning legacy platform assets and saving money. So we get that. But Don just exemplified the intrinsic motivation that comes from engaging directly with the people who actually do the work and getting them to connect something of value to something that happens in the context of a re-platform, the PCF. And that's a really important dynamic. You got to give room for that intrinsic motivation that's going to give you quality.
Yeah. I mean, Don, you used the term when we were talking earlier, quality of life issues. And, I'm not sure if you said that tongue in cheek or if that was actually a spreadsheet, quality of life issues. How did you quantify quality of life issues?
So we have a whole series of things that we came up with that were part of when we did our bake-off, everyone who was part of the bake-off had to answer some questions for me. So there's a whole survey that went out that I have been a developer for 30-something years, so I know the pain. I know the pain from back in the day.
Right.
So I tried to give people a forum, an easy way to think of things themselves, like how much time do you spend building, debugging, blah, blah, blah. But also asking some open-ended questions to find out more about where we could provide value to them. And that ended up being crucial to our understanding what we could get out of the platform and what would be better with Pivotal Cloud Foundry than we would have had with our other choice. Yeah.
I mean, I'm beside myself because you're doing the things that everyone should be doing, and it's all you guys are very casual about it, and so So I'm thinking of if you've listened to any of the Intrado Way series, you're going to hear this: ask open-ended questions over and over again, right? Be of service to staff is essentially what I'm hearing. Ask them what the actual problem is. Once again, I don't know how you magicked you guys' self into being willing to ask staff members what will help, but let's just pretend you're at some other random corporation and someone says, hey, I want you to organize this quality of life or toil or open-ended question survey of things to reduce in the organization. What would you recommend someone who thinks it's a really good idea but is not an executive but really wants to start there? Where would they start?
So finding access to the people who can answer these questions was a challenge to us at the beginning. And we basically started by going with the people who were already looking for some solutions. Oh. And from that, they reached out to other people, but having gathering information by not just asking. If you just ask open-ended questions, you'll get a shotgun blast back. Everything is wrong. Whereas if you can include some simple parameters around it where you ask specific questions, and then you ask them to explain more about those specifics, and then you lead them into the truly open-ended, you can lots of times get much better information out of them that way. If you can find a way to really quantify this, it's just better. Data is going to actually beat opinion every time. And if your company doesn't understand that, you might need to go to a different company, because in the end, that's what really makes a difference. Can we see measurable results? And that's what we're looking for.
And measurable results here would be essentially an optimization to path to production, as well as decommissioning by moving on to more efficient platforms, essentially. Is that?
Yeah, those two precisely. Those are the top two at the early stages of this project: shutting things off and migrating faster, transforming faster.
Awesome.
But what we really found is so many of the groups, what they really love is the fact that now they are able to deploy much more frequently, smaller incremental deployments, and it doesn't have to be midnight. Most of them do it outside the main work hours, but they don't do it at midnight anymore. They might do it at 8 in the evening.
Right.
And it is a 30-minute experience, not a 30-hour experience, as has happened in the past.
Yeah.
And because of this, they also are catching more bugs earlier on because they're actually running the same code in the same area. So we have had some problems with code that we brought into PCF that when we do updates of the foundation, we don't get good reconnections to services and things like that. Those things happened in our dev test environment first. We knew there were going to be a problem, so that when we brought it to production, the people were there waiting to restart the apps, waiting to do the whatever they needed to heal their apps when they didn't heal themselves automatically. And that's a huge step forward, because when you know it's going to happen, that's not the big issue. It's when you're making a change and everything falls apart.
Yeah, well, let's take that example as a center of excellence. You say that the app doesn't reconnect to a service well. Most of us in the business, we just jump to that person should be using circuit breaker protocol or the like, and we know that that's durable across restarts and all of that stuff. Okay, if you've got a background in the industry, maybe you're going to think that right away. How do you handle that from a center of excellence, cloud native perspective? Do you recommend things like circuit breaker, and do you have any motivators for people to install circuit breakers or other kinds of connection mitigation technology?
So most of our services currently aren't a lot of microservice-based infrastructure. So this is a special case for one of our newer apps. We really try to provide the level of change that's needed for the app. We don't want to do a rewrite. We want to bring it forward and have an iterative path to moving the app on. So the reason some of these things happen is we would still rather have you running on PCF and not be 100% cloud native than have you on your old software with no health checking, no automatic restarts of your app, none of these services. You're rolling your own RabbitMQ, and if it falls on its face, you don't have the operator group behind you. Right. So we want to make those steps so that you're on the platform, and then as you see the benefits, getting people to understand that they need to make it more cloud native is even easier than just getting it onto the platform, because they're like, oh, wait, if I shared my sessions, then it wouldn't matter if anything restarted. It would just pretend like it hadn't. So
that's awesome. I call that taking a piece of software that will work on Cloud Foundry, cloud tolerable. Like, you want to move everything that will, in fact, run on Cloud Foundry at any level, even if it's garbagey. You want it on Cloud Foundry because you're going to get that whole stack of underlying updates. We don't sell it very much, but App Manager, where first-level support people can tell exactly what's happening and exactly what services are bound, that's a huge improvement in service delivery. And most people they're not calculating the value of that. But yeah, cloud tolerable.
Yes. Yeah, and that's another thing. Our operations teams they were very afraid of this to start with. Because they are very much SSH into the machine and install some stuff, and we had snowflakes. We had the Great White North full of snowflakes.
Yeah.
Now it's funny to hear them. They're like, well, no, you should never SSH into a machine. Why would you ever do that? Fix it on dev test, and then we'll just install it here. So, from end to end in the company, we're seeing that change.
Yeah. And so thanks for, again, this is the change that we would like everyone to be able to adopt. It's a process. There's real engineering work. Don, what's your, I don't know, How long have you spent doing this so far? Just for the platform.
It's been 3 years since we very first began our deciding what platform we were going to be doing. It's been 2 years since we installed our very first dev test foundation, and that we've really been in the swing. It's been about a year now.
Okay, great. And what's your horizon here? I know that when I talk with Terry, he talks about, hey, eventually people are going to figure it out and this part of it will roll off. When do you think the cloud native transition is going to start rolling off for you?
I don't see why we're going to having a roving team of experts, just because up till now we've been primarily based on PCF. That's wonderful. Having somebody who understands all parts of the business, who talk to each other all the time about technical things. In our stand-up once a week, Terry can tell you, we talk really technical stuff. That's what we're looking for, answers, and we're looking for problems and who can help who with what.
Right.
So we might call it something else.
Yeah.
But I don't see why we would not want to have this technical team that is really about enhancing our knowledge across our company.
Yep.
And the other thing we've done is, we provide training. We put up training materials for people. That's our first interaction with a lot of people. Is we actually have like a 3-hour-long thing where introduction to PCF, where they learn Git, they learn PCF, they do a little concourse pipeline, and they attach it to New Relic, and they look at dashboards. And having that ability to show that, but the same is true of our other pieces. There's so many things when your company can come together on a technical level that really makes all of your products better, because you know what? We all run into the same problems, even though we think it's specific to us, and we don't have all the answers. That's the other thing I've learned in my many years, which is why we look to other people to help us inform. We're guiding, but we're not telling people what to do. We're there to help them understand and help us understand better the best solution to the problem.
Some evidence that Don's team and Don's model are working is that, and it's especially been happening the last 6 months or so as we've really started to hit our stride here, is that the Center of Excellence teams have been discussed as others to grow in the name of public cloud operations, APM instrumentation. I've heard about people wanting to do a Center of Excellence that's simply about database architecture and engineering and operations, now that a bunch of folks are going to the public cloud. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, whatever an enterprise capability is that you're trying to adopt, there's room for a Center of Excellence around it. And like Don, I think that the need for that team will last far longer than this project and budget authority is that's covering our hours right now.
Yeah. All right, Don, let me ask you a provocative question about those teams. In IT, we'll see that cycle where you do have tiger teams, centers of excellence, they'll come up, and then they will hit, what will, as charitably as possible, we hit the enterprise architecture problem. You know what I'm talking about?
So there are a few things I see as problems in enterprise architecture. One thing I would like to say to what we've talked about, I don't really like this Center of Excellence term. It makes it sound like we know so much more than everyone else.
Right.
We know different things than everyone else. We don't know more.
Yeah.
So I really like it being, we chose it. It took us 2 weeks to come up with this acronym and have it not be either just silly or if you looked at it wrong, maybe obscene. Some of the letters that came out didn't end up being the best possible thing, but it's really important that people we're not on a hill, and we're not pronouncing to others, and we're not just writing up standards that everyone has to adhere to. We're giving suggestions, and we're letting you ask us how we think that the best way of doing something is, but then we're working with you to figure it out, and within the framework, how can we make it work better for you? So rather than us doing boxes and arrows and you have to tell us before you do anything, we're there to inform. And sometimes we might stick our finger in a little bit if we feel something's not quite going the right way, but it's more like to make sure that we're really going the right direction, rather than to say, no, you can't do that until you fill out form AB26.
Right. Okay. So this is how I think you avoid that enterprise architect thing. So yours is always stay in the mix and make sure you're paying attention both to what are the organizational goals and how do you actually assist a team on the ground. That's how you stay in the lines and boxes trap. I should have said it that way. Lines and boxes trap. Yeah. Fantastic. Like this is, I think Intrado is an exemplar of looking seriously at the tech stacks that have come out since essentially 2016. We've had a revolution since 2016 in operational tech stacks, at least, and certainly CI has gotten better, and Spring, all of the Spring properties keep getting better. So I think you guys just did this really clean survey of the market and implemented what you saw as the clear path. I mean, is that how it seemed to you?
So the thing that really made me feel good about our choices was we learned about DKS was going to be coming online. It wasn't there when we bought the product,
right?
But I knew that there were certain workloads that honestly that was the right match for.
Yep.
But we couldn't keep expanding our operations team to have more and more people running things. We needed an abstraction layer above it, and the more similar it was to our PCF, the better off we were. And that's been essential for us to be able to know that we're really going to be able to transition everything onto the platform.
Yeah.
Both things that you would think would only be legacy to modern Windows and Linux workloads.
Yep.
We do it all.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're at the top of the hour, Don. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing or anything like that?
No, looking forward to Spring 1 in October. I was lucky enough to be chosen as one of the first pivotal vanguards.
Nice.
And so I'm very excited about that as a program too. We get to see a lot of the technology, and this is another case of technologists talking with technologists, which is for me super exciting. That's the juice that makes my day great.
Okay. Well, we will have drinks at Spring 1, and we'll talk deep tech.
Excellent.
All right. Terry Miles. Yep. Terry Miles, as always, thanks for being the backbone of this whole thing.
Thanks to Don. Thanks to everyone. And a shout out too. We get really good pivots. There are a lot of people who've helped us out along the way, and they're an important team in this regard too. So thanks to them.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great afternoon.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.